take my phone. I know, right? I know. Going live on YouTube.
Okay, all set.
Yes, Joe. He did it for his friend. How's that?
That's it.
Okay.
Give me 1 second, I'm just texting him. Okay. Good, that's a reminder, so if I don't hear from him the next couple of days, I'll call him. All right, roll call,
Chairman Updegrove,
here.
Mr. Vocio,
Here.
Mr. Casale,
Here.
Mr. DiPaolo,
Here.
Mr. Forma, Ms. Johnson. And our big decisions. Good, we have quorum.
Okay, approval of the 10/25/24 meeting minutes. Ms. Focho? Motion. Second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, financial report.
So these are the finances from as of November 13th when they ran the reports. So the regular fund are operating every day, we have 190,619.15 in there. We have the expenses that were incurred from the last meeting to this meeting. The next one is the ARPA money. There isn't any activity in there except that we're gaining interest. We will be spending the money going forward. We have some insurance expenses and some other operating expenses we'll be taking out of there. So we're guaranteed to spend the money before the due date. The next page is the HCR Phase 1 grant. And as you'll see, it's brand new. We received the $150,000 and that was October 1st that it was awarded. So these are the expenses that are to date that are being applied, and I will put the draw in at the end of December to get those funds back. And then the next one, I'll let Matt talk about this. If you've noticed, the 38 properties that we're going to be taking from Niagara Falls have all been added to the project commitment log. And what we're just estimating that's going to be spent on them. Obviously, that's a fluid number until we actually get into construction and those numbers will change. But I'll let Matt take it over from there and he can talk about all these properties.
Yeah, I was gonna do this as part of my update. If we want to do this now, I'm happy to, or if you want to.
So we can do it now.
Okay. So starting at basically 2010 Main and down, it everything except for Griswold Street in Middleport correlates to the Blue Cardinal portfolio, the downtown district in the city of Niagara Falls. So all of those properties are close by or in that proximity. What we did is we, obviously filled this out, submitted it to Crystal Leffler at HCR, got this approved, which means first and foremost that our Phase 2 Land Bank Initiative grant is fully committed. So that doesn't mean that all of this is going to be just like this. Just like at the top, these are committed numbers, but they're not spent numbers. They're not dispersed numbers. So we have attributed to, let's say, 1509 Main Street is an odd amount because we had to balance with that one, but 56,000. What that represents is pre-development work that we can do right now. We can spend this money right now on architectural renderings or cleanouts or engineering reports or anything along those lines, non-capital expenses. And this, we believe, will be critical to getting these properties back in productive use, back in the hands of responsible developers, because we'll be able to basically make the way easier for folks that are interested in these properties. So by virtue of having this 100% committed, I'm working with Crystal Leffler to give us an extension on the Phase 2 money because the deadline for the Phase 2 grant is December 1st. So if we didn't have this done, we would not be able to continue. But Crystal is very, very open to giving us an extension. It'll probably be, we're probably going to ask for I'm not 100% sure on the timeline of the extension yet, but it'll probably be like 6 to 9 months just to get us the time to spend down the rest of this funding. And what that means is part of the conversation also centers around the open round property services funding, phase 3, let's say. So in tandem, we're going to be spending down the phase 2 money on these specific properties with these amounts being flexible among them. And then once we get to 75% spent, we can submit our application for round 3, and phase 3 will be a little more, we're working with someone to make it a little more specific on certain projects, give a little more detail to HCR about like this project, maybe specific addresses related to it, and then other projects that come up. So I know that's kind of a lot, but are there questions? How
So
can I help?
when we apply for the HCR monies initially,
This phase 2 money, this grant was applied for and received in 2023.
right, that's my point. So the application it wasn't specific to these properties. This is something that arose after we applied.
Yeah.
What would we have had a plan for the monies had we not had these properties just kind of fall into our lap?
Yeah. Well, we've
Cardinal debacle.
right. No, and it's very fortuitous that we were able to be in that position to
Well, I guess
help
what
the
I'm asking
situation.
is, are there other areas that we would have allocated, or other things that we would be working on that we can't do because we're doing this?
Well, I would say that, I mean, we have been actively working with, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we're actively working with the city of Niagara Falls, and unfortunately, the cities of Lockport and Tonawanda have not been engaged, and that's not the land banks. fault.
No, I understand.
You know what I mean? So,
And they haven't, I would,
so
I
we can
looked at the
buy
lists.
properties from the county, like we could do more in other parts of the county, and we have them. We've been like in the town of Niagara, Wheatfield and so forth, but we're doing a water tower out in
Middleport?
Middleport. But a lot of our, almost one of our issues is,
well, that's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we're not, because I don't have any problem with these projects and the fact that we have the monies there, and I'm not being
Yeah.
critical of that at all. A large part of what we do is driven by, and that's always been right from the inception of the land bank. It was always meant to be driven by the municipality, not by the land bank, which is different than other models throughout the state.
Yeah.
I do look at the in-run lists, and I can understand why maybe there hasn't been a lot of activity, because I haven't really, for whatever reason, haven't seen the amounts or types of properties that I have seen in the past. Now, that's all anecdotal. That's just from me looking at the list and being familiar with the streets or where the properties are located, but I'm not really surprised by that. But the question really was, we made the application before we had these.
Yes.
So the application wasn't contingent upon doing these properties. The other question, so there's so you've got multiple properties that are gonna need inspection and environmental testing. Do we need to RFP that? Okay, how does that work? And do you
We have
select
to-
one?
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
That was when we selected Rodriguez Group.
Oh, so Rodriguez is doing these two.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct. So can I just go back to what your earlier question though? You know, in Lockport, Matt worked on the study that we did. So far, the city of Lockport seems to be giving us demos, and we're doing them, but
Right.
that's like, they're not asking us about rehabs.
Right.
And, you know, and Katie has worked with the city of North Tonawanda, and I'm gonna talk about like getting them in a position to foreclose on properties, because for a long time, we kept reaching out. And I guess that's something else, like, I'm not be too critical of cities, but Matt spent a lot of time running down opportunities that never went anywhere. Because it was, I mean, for the city, it was always like, I don't
They
know.
hadn't done a foreclosure since pre-COVID, the
And
city.
every time we call, we're gonna do this, then we're gonna do that, then we call the mayor, then we call this person, and
They're finally, I actually just talked to the attorney the other day because I know Big Daddy's is one of the properties. It's in their foreclosure that is gonna come this way, that we've talked about. They're gonna file their judgment, they wanna wait till after the holidays, which I understand. And so they're hoping to file the judgment in January, which in essence means when they file it, we have to do settlement conferences. They probably will get title and the judgment signed in like March or April, depending on the judge's thing. So They are at least moving forward. There are a lot of properties, although Rob, I don't know how many, if you know, you probably don't know, but how many have actually paid out to come out of it. But they're at least starting to move forward.
That's why when they do give us something that we can react on, like Bridge Street, the demolition of the radio tower, Bridge Street we're doing. And the, like the water tower in
Middleport.
Sheriff's asked us to do that in Middleport, so.
And it's, you know, to your, Andrew's point to your question, the conversation with the Land Bank Association at the state level is that these foreclosure properties, these in-ram auctions are not the avenue that they were, you know, based on the Tyler versus Hennepin decision, based on just these factors that we're discussing. And to your question, the thing I would suggest in phase 3 and also given the fact that this is still a little flexible, is there's money I think that we should be allocating towards acquisition. I think that would be the largest portion of the
We
phase
didn't
3
really,
money.
yeah, that wasn't something that we had flexibility on earlier on, because that wasn't something that we were really doing, but we do have to start considering that.
And I know we all know how difficult it is in the private market to do that, but that's like the folks in Rochester and Buffalo and not Binghamton, but Oswego and around the state, they're talking about let's use our funding for acquisitions. So that's, if I had to go back and amend this, I would probably, knowing what we know now, just change that. But
Yeah.
There still is latitude within this to say, oh, well, we've got, you know, an address that came up last minute. We're going to take some funding from this and put it there if we have to. Because they're, you know, the HCR stance is they just want us to spend the money. You know what I mean?
Matt, for phase 3, or well, I call it phase 3, or the phase 3 application, are we doing, I know we're doing one application, but are we splitting it into like almost like 2 parts, or doing 2 separate applications, one to focus on some of these properties, or well, 2010, and then one for the rest of our activity? How are we gonna structure that?
And that's a great question. And I think, honestly, the way I've talked about it with this David Jenkins from Millennium so far is it's not a moving target, but it's a open sort of, he needs to know what our plan is, and I'm working with him to give that to him. So it might end up being one application that contains certain projects at certain dollar amounts, and then other pools of money for acquisition, demolition, stabilization.
Okay.
But I think that's just, I think it would make a stronger application if we had not, you know, everything allocated, but just a couple projects like 2018, 2010 Maine that we're going to absolutely dedicate $500,000. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like, but then we also say, well, we're going to go out, we're going to acquire $400,000 worth of housing, commercial properties, et cetera, et cetera. Because you know, given everything I've heard, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be asking for the phase 3 maximum or close to that, because we can, given they were very pleased that we have this all committed. I'll just add that too. So we're doing pretty decent on overall the goal of the initiative, if you will, because there, you know, other places are struggling to spend the money, and we've got a big project that we're working on. So
what is the timing for taking some of these properties? And the reason I ask is because if it's all going to be together, or if there's pieces, because the environmental stuff, we RFP that every time. So, and I think there's cost savings if we tell a consulting firm that, you know, we have 10 properties all on the same block for you to do testing on at the same time. I mean, there's mobilization costs and things like
That's
that.
kind of what I was getting at before, when I asked about that. You've
Can
got
we-
multiple properties, that's why.
Can we do the environmental all at once for all the Main Street ones?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, we'll
as long as we have access to the properties, like, will we get
We do.
access to all of them
We
at
have,
the same
we have
time?
access.
we're working
now.
on all of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've got,
The
I've got a
Main Street
list.
ones?
The Main
We
Street.
don't have
legal
to-
access, not
Right.
legal access.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't want to have
Yes.
consultants.
We'll wait until we have legal
After,
access.
Yeah.
after December
I wanna wait.
17th, we should be
Yeah.
able to just, you know, with access,
What's December 17th?
the foreclosure of the
That's-
portfolio,
That's when they'll actually have the judgment.
the bank. Yeah.
So the judge,
They'll have a judgment, but they won't, we'll still have to wait for them to take title after the judgment.
And the gentleman's name is Chuck Anderson. He's the
But
auction.
we're not transferring title to the land bank, though, correct? the city is gonna maintain title?
Right, at first. And then as we go along, the way I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong here, the way I understand it is we'll do tours, we'll do marketing, we're gonna, position each of these buildings and then find a developer for basically each one, or
In the committee, it's not us.
not us,
There's-
right.
There's gonna be like a main street committee that is comprised of the land bank, the city, Empire State Development, Niagara University.
Yeah,
So in that committee will evaluate and make a recommendation to the land bank board.
yeah,
So one by one, much like what we've done in the past. So if a property is coming to the land bank, it should be coming with a recommendation from that board for a developer. And not, for it to be held in the land bank for any time other than just for that legal transaction so they can put the development enforcement orders in place.
So the city will own it. The city will own the properties and then we'll market the properties and try to get a developer in place.
Well, not the land bank itself, but
But
the
a committee.
Yeah, yeah.
So then, I'm just trying to think about how the process works. So then the property, how does it go to the developer? Does the land bank take title to it or does the city
It would-
sell it?
Just
to
like
them?
in all of I think every deal will be a little bit different, but just like all the deals that we have been doing, they're all different, right? They're all unique. You're gonna look at applications and then you select the developer and in that application will be how much they're offering to pay for it or how much they're, willing to invest in it. The committee will select that package and then that recommendation would come to the land bank board because our authority is the ability to put that development enforcement workers in place, whereas the urban renewal agency is subject to much like all municipalities. Their
So-
disposition
Is different.
different, yes.
So it would have to be owned by the land bank even if it's for 5 minutes.
All of our properties are.
Yeah, normally for most
Yeah,
of ours,
it's
except for, well, and right now, we haven't taken ownership of the other falls properties, but most of the other properties will have all the paperwork done. I file, like, the city of Niagara Falls to us, the development enforcement more, and then the next,
We own
it's
it, like,
all filed
yeah.
within like 2 minutes of
2
each
minutes,
other.
okay.
Yeah, so we only own it for a very short time, which we're still entitled, but it severely limits our responsibility of doing it. Then we're not trying to get insurance on it and
Well,
things
right,
like
that's
that.
what I wondered, yeah.
With
So
all
then,
that being said, when does it appear on the website for sale?
oh, it'll be on, I'm
We
sorry.
have a website. Matt has been working with Joe to create a website. It's already ready. It's just a matter of when the city tells us to turn it on.
Yeah, so then once that's on, we'll have, I think, fulfilled our requirement to list it, and people know
And
that it's out
actually, I
there.
mean, it goes beyond their requirement because we don't actually own it. The requirement legally is for any properties that we own, which we don't own, so.
Right. So we'll have, all of it will be available out there. I can share that website with the board too, so you can take a look at it.
What
who
was
gets
it?
the money when they're sold?
Well, I think it's us,
That's a
but
good
I mean,
question.
it'll be interesting because I don't, a lot of these properties are in pretty rough shape, so.
Well, yeah, most of them are upside down.
And there are demo candidates in here, et cetera, so.
And I'm assuming you want to have the environmental information to be able to put on the listing.
That's what a lot of this is allocated towards, is any of that we can do, whether it's environmental work, architectural renderings, engineering stuff, like all of that can be done as part of the, here you go, fix this building.
So I'm thinking I should probably put together an RFP with information about all of these properties and have it ready to go. So the day we get access, I can send it out because we have to give people at least a few weeks, probably 3 weeks, I would think. It's just a
Because
lot of properties.
and we can't use what we've been using. We've got to do it fresh for this.
No, so we have 5 firms that are like pre-qualified
Oh,
because we went
okay.
through that whole process. But what we do is every time we have a property, we send a scope of work request to those 5 firms.
Okay, gotcha.
And then they submit back proposals with pricing.
Okay.
So Amy, you would do an RFP for all of these properties for environmental?
Well, that's what I was
testing?
trying to figure out. Yeah, I mean, I would say if it just depends upon how many we have access to. If we have access to all of them at the same time, I would probably do it all together just because there's synergies with, they're all near each other.
I mean, I think you can work on that now and just tell them.
That's what I'm
that,
saying,
Yeah, the
yeah.
start date is just
Yeah.
We could probably have it all ready to go and select the
Yes.
firm and everything, yeah.
And then tell them like, do not go out until. X,
Right,
Y, Z.
Yeah.
right, that's what I'm
Because
wondering.
that's what we've told Rodriguez Group, is like
Because-
they're already ready to go as soon as. you know.
Right, because if all of these have been approved by HCR,
Mhm.
well, they haven't filled out all the things yet though.
I feel the things. I mean, the
we
program
didn't
description form,
Right, but we haven't submitted the environmental because we
the
haven't done it.
environmental compliance checklist is for capital expenses. So we don't plan to do any capital work yet. But if we did want to do capital work on, let's say 1708, we'd have to do that checklist.
Because the environmental testing I've done so far is for that checklist.
Yeah, well,
So would we do the same
I would-
type of stuff?
I would do the same thing, maybe a phase one on some of these.
Well,
just
that's because some of them I know are contaminated.
Yeah. So, I mean, the arming people with information, I think, is the goal of this.
So maybe we want to do just phase ones on all of them, but throw in asbestos testing.
Yeah, and if that's not part of it.
Amy, do you
Yes,
remember when they did the 104 work and they found that slag on Lewiston Road?
Mhm.
Do you anticipate any of that as you're heading further down Main Street?
Well, that's a loaded question. So I think that's a decision that the board would have to make whether they want to do a radiological screening. I'm just going to throw it out there that all the ones we've done in Niagara Falls, I've been finding it everywhere. Like some of them, there's one site we did, it's 25 times the background level and it's residential. So if you look, you're going to find it. I don't know what kind of can of worms that's going to open.
We could, well, discuss that.
I know you and I have had this conversation multiple
Yeah.
times. It concerns me. But
I put that on the, it is what it is, category. That's good category. It is what it is. I mean, it's just, it's
there. I
it's
mean,
there,
it's
and
it's
it's just
background. I mean,
right, it's back to life.
it's everywhere. So is it something you want to test for or not?
I don't know.
There's no requirements right
Yeah,
now
that's
to
not
test
something-
for it.
That's not something we do. That's not something we do. If an individual with all
Yeah.
they're wanting to, then they have every right to do that.
But normally in a phase one, you don't do that. I mean, we were doing it because of an issue that came up, but I don't recommend doing it.
Well, that's
Because
the
I think it's
standard.
gonna-
We can do whatever is standard, right? And then for a phase
Yeah,
one.
and it's not standard in a phase one.
Yeah.
It's, no one does it.
And that
It's
way,
just, it's out there, but.
So Matt, can you just give the board a quick update on 2010 and
Oh, yeah.
our meeting with Niagara University in 2018?
yeah, I had a slide, but it's fine. 2010 Maine right now is so let me step back. We met with Niagara University. Niagara University is very interested in using 2010 and 2018 as student housing. So, and that would be a large scale project that we would be involved with, helping both, the university, a developer, the city, and whomever else would be involved with the stabilization get to a point where they could, you be the end user and you could be the end user. So, and they're verbally committed to that. We're working on getting more formalized commitment. I walked through 2010 with Ken Clapper, Lori Trainer, Bill from an engineering firm, and the Rodriguez Group folks to really analyze what needs to happen to that building in order to preserve the facade, which is the goal, I think, of SHPO. SHPO isn't asking us to, do the Secretary of the Interior standards to make the building what it was. They just want to make sure that what we're doing is mindful of the historic significance in the district. So what they said we would probably end up being done at 2010 and then subsequently 2018 would be framing from the basement up each level with wood bracing in order to preserve the outer shell and the facade. So because the fact in 2010 there is only half of a floor in the first level, they would need to get down to the basement to kind of, come up with that plan But as far as I'm concerned, they have a good understanding of what needs to be done, and they're going to write up a narrative. This Lori Trainer, who's like an expert in the historic preservation field, about how, what we're going to do is, number one, in keeping with the state's historic preservation guidelines, and then number two, necessary, because it's otherwise, in order to save these buildings, in order to do, what basically the office wants us to do, we have to kind of look at it as a just a stabilization, not a rehab, if that makes sense. Because there's no rehabbing a lot of these buildings, and 2010. So that's where it's at right now. That was last Friday. I was out with them. I have not gotten that narrative yet, but we're actively working on that.
Do we do we have to accept the financial report? I don't think so, right? It's just for information. We have an action item, 78 Bridge Street.
I can talk about this. So 78 Bridge Street, what happened was we put out, we selected a firm for the demolition, and they were not able to do the job. We had a lot of questions during the last RFP about the insurance requirements that we had, and so one insurance was changed to address some of the concerns, and that's why we're reissuing the RFP, and we'll just put it back out for, I think I gave it a week and a half or something like that. We'll get responses, hopefully, a robust response, and then, we'll have to bring that back next month. So it just, and then I have the date as January to have that Bridge Street tower and building down. So it's moving back a month.
Okay, do we need a motion for this to reissue the RFP?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move it. Second by Mr. DiPaolo. All in favor? Aye, okay. And then, did you have anything else to add to your update?
I do. I just, I wanted to bring it. This was actually going to be for last month. I'm not going to go through this whole thing, but I did kind of want to let everybody know that this is available. Amy and I gave a presentation at the Reclaiming Vacant Properties Conference, which, I was very, very honored to be a part of. I thought Amy did a great job, and we were able to kind of connect with, a lot of different people. So I just wanted to scroll through this to let you know that we put this together. If any of us here, any of you all give a presentation and you'd like a copy of this to use, please feel free.
Are you going to send us this?
I can, yeah. I'll just send it out. As a PowerPoint, you can, for your own purposes.
Send it to send it to our the county's public information officer.
Okay.
So that he has it, because he uses this.
Okay.
When I give presentations sometime to the chamber, he's used some of these.
Okay. Yeah, so it kind of covers all of it. So I just kind of wanted to scroll through it, and let you know that I will send this out. And we'll have, this as an option. I want to make sure I didn't forget anything about 2010 Maine. And you, okay, please. Yep, okay. And that was the only other slide I had. The last thing I wanted to let everyone know, and I do have pictures of this. I wanted to put it together, but I did it yesterday. So we had talked about securitizing all of the houses that are being worked on in the neighborhoods by Rodriguez Group. So we have now security cameras on each of those addresses.
Really?
Yeah.
So where are they, like, just aiming towards the street, or?
Yeah, they're largely by the front door, and then aimed right out at the walk. So
Be careful next time
and yeah, take a look. Yeah, tell me what you think. I'm hoping they're visible. That people, and they got little red lights blinking. So like,
Matt, the tentative date for the press event for Main Street.
Right, we're having a press conference on December 3rd at 2 p.m. Everyone is invited to announce this Main Street Blue Cardinal revitalization initiative.
You said 2 p.m.?
2 p.m. Yeah.
Is that on Main Street?
It's going to be, if everything goes well, it's going to be at the Rapids Theater.
So Matt had tentatively put everything together, but bringing it to the committee first committee meeting on the 26th. So, you know, assuming the committee is okay with that date and the location and so forth, yeah.
So, and that's the last, I've still got to get in touch with that Dan, he never called me back. I'll reach out again today.
Okay.
And that's basically it for me. So I just kind of wanted to touch base on stuff like that. But I think, you know, we're doing a lot, and we're very much at the forefront of the conversation that's happening around the state. Because I just another takeaway from, and I've mentioned this before, but I like to you know, reiterate that one of the big things that separates us from other land banks is that we're here in the Department of Economic Development, the IDA, and it really gives us a wider perspective, because Buffalo, they're focused on housing. They're focused on smaller projects. Rochester and Syracuse, they're almost exclusively residential. So really and truthfully, I think we're, you know, able to do more and have a larger impact, and that's pleasing to our funders, because they like to see that funding go farther.
So you don't
that's
see
awesome.
that model anywhere else where there's interaction amongst economic development, IDA, anywhere in the state?
No, and that's the feedback we got at the national conference too. Like maybe St. Louis, maybe because they've been around forever, but
Yeah.
like,
I've gotten a lot of feedback,
Good model, right?
follow-up.
To hang your head on.
There's been a lot of people who have reached out to me for information about what we're doing. Especially like the brownfield stuff. I mean, several
Mhm.
people have reached out to me. EPA in Washington reached out about the land bank model, and they've asked me different questions and stuff about how we're doing with brownfields through land bank, and they're writing a white paper and asking a ton of questions. So we'll see where that goes.
That's good.
that's it for me. So thank you.
Thanks. Oh, and you said you're sending it to us too, the presentation?
Yeah, I'll make sure that everyone gets that. So
That's good, I want to go through it. Kind of gives people talking points and just kind of reminds us where we're at, because there's so many pieces moving that you handle every day, but we touch it, you know, a lot less frequently. So it is important. It always seems like we're starting from ground zero with a lot of questions that I ask. You know, are we taking title to this? I know I've asked you that 3 times. I get that. I understand that. But the answer is always the same until it changes. Then I guess we don't have to worry about it.
Well, and I think that's
Happy.
important, it's 2010, remember, like when we took 2010, there was a little concern, because I think that was one of the first times that we've ever acquired a property, right?
Yeah.
That we paid for a property, and then there was concern about, you know, what are we gonna do with it? So I think it's
and that actually,
huge that we have Niagara University committed to going there.
What's the, now you mentioned the state historic preservation. What's the relationship? So the property that we took,
Mhm.
the relationship is the fact that given its age, that it would come under their purview, so that they have some sort of either influence or guidelines that we have to abide by, just based on nothing more than the type of property and the age. Like how would they come into the picture is what I'm asking.
yeah. So that's a great question. The Main Street district, almost all of the DRI district, is a national historic heritage area.
Okay, so it's already designated that, so that's where they're.
And a state historic area too. So it's national and state registers, and 2010 Maine is been looked at and is a contributing structure to that district. So it's like without it, you know, it's one of the, you know, linchpins of the district.
It's good that there's that historic oversight. It's done so well so far.
They've been really, really great to work with. So
No, listen, nobody from the
Listen.
state's watching this.
The developer
That's
for
a
that
joke.
project
If anyone from the state's
suggested
watching,
that-
I'm kidding.
But those historic tax credits are gonna be what makes this project work, and the developer's really excited
No,
about it.
I agree. That's why I'm telling them. It was a joke. But just my luck, there would be somebody watching today, right?
Niagara County.
Right?
After the land bank meetings, Matt might go and call all
Kathy.
the state agencies and say,
Joke.
we're sorry.
The press about it.
It's not us, it's him, we don't really believe it.
all right.
Okay.
So, all right, I think, do we have anything else? We don't have to approve the meeting schedule. We have the meeting schedule attached.
Now, I'll send out, you're gonna get 12 calendar invites. My apologies ahead of time. But I'll be sending those out. And then also here is the submission deadline. Again, if the board ever wanted to put something on the agenda, that's the submission deadline, so.
I just have one.
Structure.
I just have one thing. So we have proposals due on Monday for the environmental for the water tower. Now, it went out to the 5 firms that the board already pre-approved. Does that need to come before the board for approval to select the firm? I'm guessing it's probably gonna be about 4,000 or 5,000.
For which one?
The water
Middleport
tower,
one?
the Middleport one, yeah, for environmental testing.
I mean, we usually approve it.
Didn't the board already approve the 5 firms?
They did.
Oh, it's part of that group.
Yeah.
It's part of that
Oh,
group,
yeah,
yeah.
so-
But I didn't know if it needed to come before the board for
The last one,
recommendation.
we did with Bridge Street didn't. I don't think we,
Yeah, I don't remember.
So
I think, I
if
know
we
when
approve
before
the
the.
firm, we'll just take a little bit and that's it.
Yeah,
Oh, all right, well then I don't know why we didn't.
because I mean, and especially because I don't know if we're gonna need a December meeting, right? I don't expect any action items in December. Do you, Matt?
I don't think so, because it'll be out, it'll be like on the ground in the Main Street area, so I don't think we're gonna be taking anything,
Yeah.
disclosing
Leave
anything.
it on the agenda
Yeah.
a week ahead of time if you don't think you have anything, just, because I don't want anyone to feel like if there is something that they have to wait.
Okay.
And I'm not going anywhere, so I have no problem being here. If we got a meeting, I know that Chris will be here, Chris will be here.
Well, we don't,
All
so
things
I,
considered,
it's okay to
yeah.
accept that then, so right? The one, for
Yeah,
the
that's
5,
fine.
yeah, sounds,
I'm guessing it'll be under
Yeah.
5,000, or around 5,000.
Okay. Anything else? All right, I'll move to adjourn.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Bocho. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Steve.